Let's look at the prompt. Which choice most effectively uses data from the graph to complete the statement? So let's start reading. In high concentrations, hydrogen sulfide is typically toxic to plants. Researchers wanted to understand what effects low doses of it might have on plant growth. They treated bean, corn, wheat, and pea with various concentrations of hydrogen sulfide and tracked the germination of those seeds along with the germination of untreated seeds. Treatment with particular concentrations of hydrogen sulfide was associated with accelerated germination. For example, so when we look at the table, we're noticing that with a small amount of hydrogen sulfide, for instance, 10 micromoles per liter, you're actually getting a higher percent of germination all throughout, actually. But with a higher amount, you're getting lower germination, but it actually becomes higher for a brief moment. And untreated is sort of in the middle throughout everything. So the untreated is kind of right there, and at the end ends up being lowest. So even a high amount of hydrogen sulfide is more effective between, let's say, 60 and 168 hours, because right there, the triangle line is the highest in that domain. Anyway, so let's look at the answers. At 24 hours, less than 10% of the seeds treated with the sulfide at a concentration of 10 had germinated. So 24 hours, less than 10%, I agree with that, whereas more than 90% had germinated at 168 hours. Well, those are both true, so let's leave it for later. B, at 48 hours, more than 70% of the seeds with 10 had germinated. At 48 hours, more than 70% of the 10 had germinated. That's true. Whereas only about 50% of the untreated seeds had germinated. That is also true. So these are both true. Let's look at C. At 168 hours, more than 90% of the seeds at 10 or 500 had germinated. At 168, more than 90% of only the 10 had germinated, not the 10 or 500. So we can get rid of C because it's not factually correct. D, at 48 hours, 50% of the seeds at 10 had germinated. 48 hours, actually, around 75% of the 10 had germinated. So we can get rid of D because it's not factually correct. Now, picking between A and B, let's just take another look at the statement they gave us to make sure that we're picking an answer that matches closely. So, treatment with particular concentrations was associated with accelerated germination. So it sounds to me like they want to hear about both. Because it says particular concentrations, not one single concentration. So between A and B, I think I'm leaning toward A. Let's read it one more time. At 24 hours, less than 10% of the seeds treated with the 10 had germinated, whereas 90% had germinated at 168. So this is just the 10. And looking back at choice A one last time, I'm realizing why that one's actually off, because it's only the concentration of 10 micromoles per liter that's being compared. So there's no comparison in A between the treated and untreated, but B does have that. It says more than 70% of the seeds treated at 10 had germinated at a certain time, whereas approximately 50% of the untreated had germinated. So right there, you're getting that comparison that the treatment with the hydrogen sulfide actually was beneficial. So the answer here is B.